I am Crystal, 32 years old, and until this morning, I was a senior marketing executive at one of the biggest advertising firms in Seattle. Today is my wedding day, the happiest day of my life, or it was supposed to be. As I was getting my makeup done, my phone buzzed. A text from Bradley, my boss's son. "You're fired. Consider it my gift to you." My hands trembled as I read those words again and again. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button to hear more unbelievable true stories from my life. To understand why being fired on my wedding day hit me so hard, you need to know about my 5 years at Platinum Advertising. I joined the company right after getting my marketing degree, starting as an assistant, but quickly working my way up to a senior position. The company had a fantastic culture, largely thanks to its founder and CEO, Gerald Thompson. Gerald was the kind of boss everyone dreams of, having supportive, fair, and genuinely interested in his employees' growth and well-being. He saw potential in me from day one and became something of a mentor. Under Gerald's leadership, Platinum flourished. We had a collaborative environment where everyone felt valued. Team members celebrated each other's successes rather than competing. Gerald often said, "A rising tide lifts all boats," and he truly lived by that philosophy. The company expanded from a small local agency to a regional powerhouse, attracting major clients from across the country. Everything changed about 18 months ago when Gerald's son Bradley joined the company. Bradley had just completed his MBA from an elite business school and arrived with a sense of entitlement that was immediately apparent to everyone. Despite having zero practical experience in advertising or marketing, Bradley was appointed as Chief Operating Officer, essentially making him second in command. At first, I tried to give Bradley the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just nervous and overcompensating. Maybe he felt pressure to live up to his father's legacy. I went out of my way to be helpful, offering insights about our clients and processes. But it quickly became clear that Bradley saw me as a threat rather than an ally. "My father might think you walk on water, Crystal, but I know better," he told me during one of our first meetings. "Things are going to be different around here now." And different they were. Bradley began instituting arbitrary rules and protocols that slowed down our workflow. Creative meetings that had once been collaborative brainstorming sessions turned into formal presentations where Bradley would shoot down ideas without offering alternatives. Employees who had once felt empowered now walked on eggshells. I tried speaking to Gerald about the changes, but he seemed reluctant to interfere. "Bradley needs to find his own management style," he told me. "Give him time to adjust." It was clear that Gerald wanted his son to succeed and was giving him space to establish himself. Meanwhile, my personal life was taking a wonderful turn. I met Andrew at a charity fundraiser where Platinum was a sponsor. He was not part of our industry at all, which was refreshing. Andrew was an architect with a passion for sustainable design. He listened attentively when I talked about my work challenges, but also helped me maintain perspective. With him, I could leave the stress of the office behind and just be myself. Our relationship progressed naturally, and within a year, Andrew proposed during a weekend trip to a coastal town. We set our wedding date for June and began planning. I was determined to maintain a healthy work-life balance, despite the increasingly toxic environment at Platinum. Bradley, however, seemed to take personal offense at my happiness. My engagement coincided with him taking a more direct role in supervising my team. Suddenly, every campaign I led was subjected to excessive scrutiny. Bradley would demand last-minute changes to presentations, schedule important client meetings during my planned personal time, and question my strategic decisions in front of clients. "I notice you have been leaving exactly at 5 lately," he commented one evening, when I was packing up to meet Andrew and our wedding planner. "The people who succeed here put in whatever hours are necessary." "I have been coming in early to compensate," I explained. "And all my projects are on schedule or ahead." Bradley smirked. "For now," he said. "But client needs can change quickly. I would hate for your personal distractions to affect your performance." The threat was thinly veiled. Bradley was looking for any excuse to undermine me. I started documenting everything, every success, every client compliment, every unreasonable demand from Bradley. I forwarded important emails to my personal account, sensing that I might need evidence of my contributions later. Despite the tension, I remained committed to my work. Platinum had been my professional home for 5 years, and I had clients I genuinely cared about. More importantly, I refused to let Bradley drive me out. Standing my ground became a matter of principle. Andrew was incredibly supportive through all of this. You should not have to tolerate being treated this way, he would say. But I understand why you are fighting. Just remember that your value isn't determined by that job or by Bradley's opinion of you. Those words would prove more prophetic than either of us realized at the time. As our wedding date approached, I tried to ensure all my work projects were in excellent shape. I trained team members to handle urgent matters during my 2-week honeymoon. I created detailed documentation for all ongoing campaigns. I even prepared contingency plans for various scenarios that might arise. No one could say I wasn't being professional. Gerald seemed impressed by my preparation. "This is why you are one of our best, Crystal," he said after I walked him through the transition plan. "Take your time off and enjoy every moment. You have earned it." If only his son felt the same way. The 3 months leading up to my wedding became increasingly unbearable at work. Bradley seemed determined to make my professional life as difficult as possible. It started with small things excluding me from important emails, rescheduling meetings at the last minute, to conflict with my wedding vendor appointments, and publicly questioning decisions I had made that had already been approved. Then came the Summit project. Crestview Summit was a luxury resort chain and potentially our biggest client ever. Landing their full marketing contract would mean millions in revenue for Platinum. Gerald assigned me as the lead on the pitch because of my experience in the hospitality sector. I was thrilled with the opportunity and immediately began developing innovative concepts for their brand repositioning. "I want you to know that I will be overseeing every aspect of the Crestview Summit project," Bradley announced during our kickoff meeting. "This is too important to leave to chance. I expect daily progress reports, and will need to approve every element before it goes to the client." This level of micromanagement was unprecedented and clearly designed to assert control. Nevertheless, I maintained my professionalism. "Of course, Bradley. I will keep you in the loop on everything." Over the next few weeks, I poured my heart and soul into the Crestview campaign. My team and I developed a comprehensive strategy that would revitalize their brand while preserving the heritage elements their loyal customers valued. The creative was fresh, the media plan innovative, and the digital components cutting edge. 2 days before our internal review, when the presentation was nearly finalized, Bradley sent an email at 8:30 in the evening. "After further consideration, I believe we need to take a completely different direction with Crestview. The current approach feels dated. Please revise to focus on millennials and social media influencers instead of their traditional demographic. New draft due tomorrow at 9. This made no sense from a business perspective. Crestview's core customers were affluent travelers in their 40s and 50s, not millennials. The research clearly showed their brand loyalty was strong, and they just needed a refreshed approach, not a complete repositioning. I called Bradley immediately. "The data does not support targeting millennials as their primary demographic. We risk alienating their core customer base." "The data is open to interpretation," Bradley responded coldly. "And my interpretation is that they need younger customers. Make the changes, Crystal." I stayed at the office until 3 in the morning, working with my exhausted team to create an alternative presentation. We still included elements of our original strategy as option B, hoping we could steer the client back toward what we knew would work better. The next morning, with less than 4 hours of sleep, I presented both concepts to our internal team. Gerald was present, and I could see his brow furrow as Bradley explained the strategic pivot he had mandated. "Interesting approach," Gerald said diplomatically, "but I am curious why we moved away from targeting their existing customer base." The research seemed quite clear. Before I could respond, Bradley jumped in. "The research had limitations. I believe we need to be more forward-thinking. Crystal was initially resistant to the change, which concerns me." The implication that I was being inflexible stung, especially since the entire pivot had been Bradley's unilateral decision made at the 11th hour. The client presentation was scheduled for the following week, just 10 days before my wedding. Despite the unnecessary drama, it went remarkably well. I presented both concepts, but focused more attention on our original strategy, using data to support our recommendations. The Crestview executives responded enthusiastically, particularly to our initial approach. "This demonstrates a deep understanding of our brand and customers," their chief marketing officer said. "We appreciate the alternative concept as well, but your primary recommendation aligns perfectly with our vision." After the clients left, Bradley was visibly upset. "You undermined me in there," he hissed. "You barely presented the millennial concept." "I presented both concepts professionally," I replied. The client responded more positively to the strategy supported by their own customer data. That is a win for us, regardless of which concept they preferred. Later that afternoon, I received an email from the Crestview CMO, copied to Gerald, but not Bradley. Fantastic presentation today, Crystal. Your insights were spot on. We would like you to be our direct point of contact as we move forward with this partnership. This should have been a moment of professional triumph, but instead it escalated the tension with Bradley. He called me into his office the next morning. From now on, all communication with Crestview will go through me, he said without preamble. I cannot have you building personal relationships with clients that circumvent the proper management structure. That is not what happened. I defended myself. The client simply expressed a preference for working directly with the strategy lead, which is standard practice. Nevertheless, that is my decision, Bradley said with finality. And speaking of decisions, I noticed you have requested 2 weeks off for your wedding and honeymoon. Given the Crestview situation, I can only approve 1 week. This was a direct contradiction of what Gerald had already approved. Your father already signed off on the 2-week leave, I said, trying to maintain my composure. My father is not your direct supervisor anymore. I am. Bradley's smile was cold. 1 week is all I can spare for the team right now. I left his office and immediately went to Gerald, who overruled his son and reconfirmed my 2-week leave. This was a small victory, but it made my relationship with Bradley even more strained. The week before my wedding, when I should have been finalizing details and enjoying pre-wedding celebrations, Bradley sent over an urgent request for a comprehensive report on all active accounts with specific projections and strategy. Recommendations for the next quarter. This was not a regular report we produced and would require days of work to compile properly. This is due before you leave, his email specified. Consider it a way to ensure all your responsibilities are properly documented during your absence. I canceled my final dress fitting, postponed my manicure appointment, and worked through the night 2 days in a row to complete the unnecessary report. I submitted it 48 hours before my wedding day, thoroughly exhausted but proud of my professionalism in the face of such obvious sabotage. Bradley's response was a single line received: I will review when I have time. All that work, all that stress, and he couldn't even acknowledge the effort. But at least it was done, and I could focus on the most important day of my life. Or, so, I thought. My wedding day dawned bright and beautiful. The weather forecast had predicted rain, but the morning sky was clear blue with just a few wispy clouds. I took it as a good omen, a sign that despite all the work stress today would be perfect. I woke up in a hotel suite surrounded by my closest friends. My maid of honor, Sabrina, had organized a lovely breakfast for our bridal party. As we ate croissants and fresh fruit-sipping mimosas and coffee, I felt the tension of the past months melting away. Today was about Andrew, and me about love and new beginnings. Nothing could spoil that. You look so happy, my mother said as she helped arrange my veil. I have never seen you glow like this. We spent the morning getting ready with the hairstylist and makeup artist transforming us one by one. There was laughter, a few happy tears, and countless photos being taken. The photographer captured candid moments of us in matching silk robes, the bridesmaids helping each other with jewelry, my mother fastening the pearl necklace that had been worn by 3 generations of women in our family. It was during my makeup session, just as the artist was applying my eyeshadow, that my phone buzzed with a text message. I normally would have ignored it, but several important vendors still needed to confirm final details, so I asked Sabrina to check it for me. Her expression changed immediately. Crystal, I think you need to see this. She handed me the phone and I read the message from Bradley. You're fired. Consider it my gift to you. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. My hands began to shake and I felt a cold wave of shock wash over me. The makeup artist paused, sensing something was wrong. Crystal, what is it? My mother asked, alarmed by my sudden change in demeanor. I couldn't find words at first. Being fired was bad enough, but to do it this way on my wedding day was unimaginably cruel. It was a deliberate attempt to ruin what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. Bradley just fired me, I finally managed to say. By text message, on my wedding day. The room fell silent. Then Sabrina took charge, her voice firm but gentle. Give me your phone. You are not dealing with this today. This is your wedding day, and nothing is going to spoil it. But what about our mortgage? Our health insurance? The practical implications were hitting me all at once. Andrew and I had just bought our first home together. Our financial plans assumed two incomes. Not today, Sabrina insisted. Today you are getting married to the love of your life. Everything else can wait until tomorrow. She was right, of course, but the shock had already cast a shadow over the morning. I tried to refocus on the preparations, but my mind kept returning to that text. Why today? Of all days? What kind of person does something so deliberately hurtful? When it was time to put on my dress, I forced myself to push aside thoughts of Bradley and platinum advertising. My bridesmaids helped me into the ivory lace gown I had fallen in love with months ago. As they buttoned the long row of tiny pearl buttons up my back, I took deep breaths and reminded myself what today was really about. Looking in the mirror at my completed bridal appearance, I felt a surge of determination. I would not let Bradley rob me of this joy. I would walk down that aisle with my head held high, focusing only on Andrew and our future together. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m. at a restored historic garden with a charming gazebo. When I arrived, I was told Andrew had asked to see me before the ceremony, a slight deviation from our plan to maintain the tradition of not seeing each other beforehand. He says it is important, the wedding coordinator explained. We arranged to meet in a private corner of the garden where Andrew would have his back turned as I approached. When I saw him in his tailored suit, standing tall with his broad shoulders and dark hair neatly styled, my heart swelled with love. "You can turn around," I said softly. When he faced me, his expression was a mixture of awe and concern. "You look absolutely breathtaking," he said, taking my hands in his. Then his face grew serious. Sabrina told me what happened. About the text from Bradley. I hadn't wanted him to know, not before the ceremony. "I am sorry. I did not want this to affect our day." To my surprise, Andrew smiled. A genuine, almost relieved smile. "Do not apologize. In fact, I think you should see this as a blessing in disguise." "A blessing?" "Andrew, I just lost my job. How is that a blessing?" "Trust me," he said, his eyes twinkling with something that looked like suppressed excitement. "Sometimes the worst things happen at exactly the right time. Let us get married, and I promise everything will make sense soon." His cryptic response was puzzling, but his confidence was reassuring. Whatever he knew that I didn't, it had clearly eased his mind about our situation. I decided to trust that and focus on our ceremony. And what a beautiful ceremony it was. Walking down the aisle on my father's arm, seeing Andrew waiting for me with tears in his eyes, exchanging vows that we had written ourselves, all of it felt magical. In those moments, I truly forgot about Bradley's text and lost myself in the significance of what Andrew and I were promising to each other. After we were pronounced husband and wife and shared our first kiss as a married couple, we proceeded to the reception venue, a elegantly decorated barn with twinkling lights and floral arrangements in soft blues and whites. Our 150 guests enjoyed cocktails and appetizers while we took photos, and then we made our grand entrance as Mr. and Mrs. Campbell. The evening progressed with dinner, touching speeches from our parents, and wedding party. Our first dance to the song that had been playing when Andrew proposed. Through it all, I maintained my smile and genuine joy, though questions about our financial future lingered in the back of my mind. During the cake cutting, I noticed a commotion near the entrance to the reception. Looking over, I was shocked to see Gerald Thompson and his wife Eleanor arriving elegantly dressed, but looking somewhat uncertain. They had not been on our guest list, though I had considered inviting Gerald before things deteriorated with Bradley. Andrew followed my gaze and squeezed my hand. "I will explain everything," he whispered. "But first, we should greet them." As we made our way across the room, I saw Gerald spot us and straighten his shoulders as if preparing for a difficult conversation. Eleanor gave me a warm, sympathetic smile. "Crystal, Andrew, congratulations," Gerald said, extending his hand to Andrew and then giving me a light hug. "I apologize for crashing your wedding. I would not have intruded, but there is an urgent matter we need to discuss. Could we speak privately for a few minutes?" I glanced at Andrew, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course," I replied, leading them to a small antechamber off the main reception hall. What Gerald had to say would change everything. Once we were alone in the antechamber, Gerald looked profoundly uncomfortable. Eleanor placed a reassuring hand on his arm, and he took a deep breath before speaking. "First, Crystal, I want to offer my most sincere apology for what happened today. I had no knowledge of Bradley's actions until 2 hours ago, and I am absolutely appalled." I nodded stiffly. unsure how to respond. An apology from Gerald was meaningful, but it didn't undo the damage or the stress his son had caused. How exactly did you find out? I asked. Gerald ran a hand through his silver hair, his distress evident. Martin Reynolds called me. You know Martin, the CEO of Crestview Summit? I nodded. Crestview was the major client I had secured, despite Bradley's interference. Martin called to congratulate me on your wedding, which he had heard about from his niece who works with your friend Sabrina. He also wanted to express concern about who would be handling their account now that you had been terminated. Gerald's expression darkened. Needless to say, this was the first I had heard about any termination. I immediately called Bradley, who confirmed what he had done, but seemed to think he was justified because you were, in his words, probably leaving soon anyway to start a family. The casual sexism of that assumption made my blood boil, but I kept my composure. I see. After speaking with Bradley, I began investigating further. What I discovered was deeply troubling. Gerald pulled out his phone and showed me a series of emails. Bradley has been systematically undermining your work for months. He altered reports you submitted, taking credit for your successful strategies and blaming you for any setbacks. Andrew, who had been quietly supporting me with his presence, spoke up. He also deliberately created impossible deadlines and changed project parameters at the last minute, apparently hoping to force Crystal to fail or quit. I turned to Andrew in surprise. You knew about this? He nodded. Not all of it, but some. Gerald contacted me last week after he began noticing discrepancies in the reports Bradley was providing versus what clients were saying about your work. Gerald continued. I found evidence that Bradley deliberately concealed client feedback praising your contributions. He intercepted emails, redirected phone calls, and misrepresented your role in successful campaigns. I felt a complex mixture of vindication and betrayal. I had suspected Bradley was working against me, but the extent of his sabotage was shocking. Why would you even look into this? I asked Gerald. Most CEOs would just take their son's word for it. Gerald's expression was grave. Because I built Platinum on principles of integrity and respect, and because I have always valued your contributions, Crystal. When something didn't add up, I had to investigate. Eleanor, who had been quiet until now, added Gerald has been concerned about Bradley's management style for some time. This incident forced him to take a closer look at what's really been happening. So what happens now? I asked. Bradley is still COO and he's made it clear he doesn't want me at the company. Gerald straightened his shoulders. Bradley is being temporarily removed from his position. He needs additional training and mentorship before he's ready for that level of responsibility. I was too hasty in promoting him, and that's my failure as both a CEO and a father. I was stunned. Gerald was actually holding his son accountable rather than making excuses for him. As for you, Crystal, Gerald continued, I want to be absolutely clear that your termination is null and void. Not only do I want you to return to Platinum, but I'm prepared to offer you a promotion. I glanced at Andrew, who was smiling that same knowing smile from earlier. There was clearly more to this story. I appreciate that, Gerald, I said carefully. But I'm not sure I can return to an environment that's become so toxic. Even with Bradley temporarily removed, the damage to workplace relationships has been substantial. Gerald nodded thoughtfully. I understand your hesitation, and it's completely justified. But before you make any decisions, there's something else you should know. He explained that Platinum was expanding, opening a new office in Portland to better serve our growing West Coast client base. The expansion had been in the works for months, but kept confidential until the details were finalized. I need someone I trust implicitly to run that office, Gerald said. Someone with proven marketing expertise, leadership skills, and the ability to build strong client relationships. I'd like to offer you the position of Regional Marketing Director, overseeing all West Coast accounts from the Portland office. This was far beyond a simple promotion. It was an opportunity to essentially run my own division away from Bradley and the toxic situation that had developed. The position comes with a substantial salary increase, of course, Gerald added, as well as equity in the company and a seat on the executive committee. I was speechless. This was the kind of opportunity I had hoped might come years in the future, not today, and certainly not hours after being fired by text message. Andrew squeezed my hand. This is what I was hinting at earlier. I've known about this possibility for a few days. You knew? I turned to him confused. How? Andrew's smile widened. Remember Westbrook Architectural Group? The firm I interviewed with last month? I nodded. Andrew had been excited about the interview, but hadn't heard back, or so I thought. They offered me a senior position in their Portland office 2 weeks ago. I accepted on the condition that I could start after our honeymoon. His eyes twinkled. Gerald reached out to me when he started investigating Bradley's behavior, and we realized this could be the perfect solution for both of us. You were both planning this. Without telling me, I wasn't sure whether to be touched by their concern or annoyed at being kept in the dark. Not exactly planning, Gerald clarified. I've wanted you to run the Portland office for months, but the timing wasn't finalized. When I discovered what Bradley did today, it accelerated the conversation. Eleanor added gently, Gerald wanted to offer you the position regardless. The situation with Bradley just made it more urgent to speak with you immediately. And I didn't tell you about the Westbrook offer because I wanted it to be a surprise wedding gift, Andrew explained. Then, when Gerald contacted me, we thought the two opportunities together would be something wonderful to share today. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. So you're saying we could both move to Portland, start exciting new chapters in our careers, and I'd be completely out from under Bradley's influence? Gerald nodded. Exactly. And there's one more thing. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is our real wedding gift to you and Andrew. Inside was a formal offer letter detailing the regional director position, along with something else, a substantial compensation package for the wrongful termination, including 6 months' salary as a transition bonus, even though I would be continuing with the company. This is to acknowledge the stress and unprofessional treatment you've endured, Gerald explained. It's separate from your new compensation package, and not contingent on you accepting the Portland position, though I sincerely hope you will. I felt tears welling in my eyes, but these were different from the shocked, angry tears I had suppressed earlier. These were tears of relief and gratitude. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Say you'll consider it, Gerald replied. Take your honeymoon, enjoy this special time with Andrew, and we can discuss the details when you return. There's no pressure to decide immediately. But as I looked at Andrew, seeing his supportive smile and the excitement in his eyes about our potential new adventure together, I already knew what my answer would be. I'd like to discuss the specifics after our honeymoon, I said. But yes, I'm definitely interested in the Portland position. Gerald beamed. Wonderful. And now we should let you get back to your wedding celebration. Eleanor and I will slip out quietly. This day is about you and Andrew. Actually, Andrew interjected. Why don't you stay? Join the celebration. After all, it seems we have even more to celebrate than we realized this morning. As Gerald and Eleanor accepted the invitation, and we prepared to return to the reception, I couldn't help but marvel at how dramatically my situation had changed in just a few hours. From fired by text to offered a dream position all on my wedding day. But our day of surprises wasn't over yet. As we rejoined the reception, I felt like I was floating. The weight of Bradley's cruel text message had been replaced by a buoyant sense of possibility. Andrew kept his arm around my waist, occasionally leaning in to whisper, Told you everything would work out, which made me both smile and want to elbow him for keeping secrets. Gerald and Eleanor integrated seamlessly into the celebration, graciously declining the offer to be introduced to everyone, and instead choosing to observe from a table near the back. Several of my colleagues from Platinum who had been invited to the wedding approached them, and I could see animated conversations taking place. As the band played and guests danced, Andrew pulled me close during a slow song. So Portland, he murmured in my ear. Portland, I confirmed, smiling against his shoulder. Are you really okay with moving? You love your firm here. Andrew pulled back slightly to look me in the eyes. I love you more. And Westbrook is an amazing opportunity. They specialize in sustainable urban development, which is exactly the direction I want to take my career. We are going to need a new house, I realized, thinking of the home we had just purchased, after we just finished decorating this one. Actually, Andrew said with that same knowing smile that was becoming familiar. Gerald has thought of that too. Part of your relocation package includes assistance selling our current home and finding a new one in Portland. They even have a real estate specialist who works with all their executive relocations. I shook my head in amazement. He has really thought of everything. He feels terrible about what happened, Andrew said. Not just today, but the whole situation with Bradley. Gerald mentioned that he should have seen the warning signs earlier, but was blinded by wanting his son to succeed. The music changed to a more upbeat song, and we moved off the dance floor to continue our conversation. Finding a quiet corner, I asked Andrew more details about the Westbrook position and when he had planned to tell me about it. "I was going to surprise you tomorrow morning," he admitted. "I had this whole plan to tell you over breakfast in bed before we left for our honeymoon. I thought it would be a perfect wedding gift, knowing we both had exciting new jobs waiting for us when we returned." And instead, Bradley's cruelty accelerated the timeline, I mused. Andrew nodded. "When Gerald called me 3 days ago, he was already concerned about how Bradley was treating you. He mentioned the Portland opportunity and asked if I would be open to relocating. When I told him about Westbrook, it seemed like fate." "Wait," I said, processing this new information. "Gerald was already planning to offer me the Portland position before Bradley fired me." "Absolutely," Andrew confirmed. "The firing just forced his hand on the timing. He was going to discuss it with you after our honeymoon." This revelation made me feel even more validated. Gerald had recognized my value to the company, regardless of his son's actions. The promotion wasn't just a reactionary measure to make up for Bradley's behavior. It was a recognition of my contributions and abilities. As we continued talking, one of the waitstaff approached us. "Mrs. Campbell, Mr. Thompson would like to speak with you again when you have a moment." I found Gerald standing near the gift table, looking contemplative as he watched the celebration. "Gerald, is everything okay?" He turned to me with a warm smile. "More than okay. I just wanted to discuss a few more details about the Portland office, if you don't mind taking a few minutes away from your party." "Of course not." Gerald explained that the Portland office was currently in the final stages of setup. The physical space was ready with modern facilities designed to foster the collaborative environment that had made the original Platinum so successful before Bradley's interference. "The most important aspect now is building the right team," Gerald said, "and I'd like you to have complete autonomy in staffing decisions." This was another level of trust and responsibility I hadn't expected. "You want me to select the entire team?" Gerald nodded. "You know better than anyone which of our current employees thrive in a positive creative environment and which ones have been enabled by Bradley's management style. I trust your judgment completely." He handed me another folder. "This contains the current organizational chart for Portland. We've budgeted for 20 positions initially with room to grow as we secure more West Coast clients." I opened the folder and scanned the chart. Most positions were vacant, waiting for my input on staffing. The salary ranges listed were generous, making it possible to attract top talent. "This is extraordinary," I said, genuinely moved by the level of trust Gerald was placing in me. "There's one more thing," Gerald said, his expression growing more serious. "I'd like your input on how to handle the situation with Bradley going forward." This request surprised me. "You're asking for my opinion on what to do with your son?" Gerald nodded. "Bradley has significant talents, but he lacks emotional intelligence and leadership skills. He's damaged relationships with employees and clients alike. I'd value your perspective on whether he can be rehabilitated professionally or if I need to consider a different role for him entirely." I considered the question carefully. Despite everything Bradley had done, I didn't want to be vindictive. I think Bradley needs to experience the business from the ground up, not from an executive position. He needs to understand the collaborative nature of creative work and develop respect for the contributions of others. Gerald listened thoughtfully. "So a complete reset, perhaps starting in an entry-level position, under a mentor who isn't me." "Exactly. Someone who will hold him accountable, but also help him develop the skills he's lacking. And perhaps some executive coaching focused specifically on emotional intelligence and leadership." Gerald smiled. "That's very similar to what I was thinking. Thank you for being fair-minded, especially given his behavior toward you." As our conversation concluded, Gerald handed me a business card. "This is Diane Russell, an executive coach I've worked with before. When you're ready to take on the Portland role, she'll be available to help you transition into this new level of leadership." The thoughtfulness of this gesture providing support for my professional development, even as he was entrusting me with major responsibility, exemplified why Gerald had been such a successful leader and why Platinum had thrived under his plain guidance. "Thank you for everything, Gerald," I said sincerely. "Not just the opportunity, but for believing in me and for taking action when you realized what was happening." "Thank you for your loyalty to Platinum despite the challenges," he replied. "I look forward to seeing what you build in Portland." As Gerald rejoined Eleanor and I returned to Andrew, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and excitement. What had started as one of the worst moments of my professional life had transformed into an unexpected opportunity for growth and advancement. The celebration continued around us, and I was finally able to fully enjoy my wedding day, secure in the knowledge that our future held promise and possibility. But the evening still had one more surprise in store, and this one wouldn't be nearly as pleasant. 3 hours after Gerald and I had finished our conversation about the Portland office, as the reception was in full swing with dancing and celebration, a commotion erupted near the entrance. I was in the middle of a conversation with my college roommate when I heard raised voices. Turning toward the sound, I saw him, Bradley Thompson, his face flushed with anger, his tie loosened and hair disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. He was arguing with one of the venue staff who was clearly trying to prevent him from entering. "I need to speak to Crystal right now," Bradley demanded, his voice carrying across the room. The music continued playing, but guests nearby had begun to notice the disturbance. Andrew materialized at my side protectively. "Do you want me to handle this?" he asked quietly. I took a deep breath. I need to deal with this myself. After everything that had happened, I wasn't going to hide from Bradley. As I approached, Bradley spotted me and pushed past the staff member. There she is, the manipulative climber herself. Gerald, who had been speaking with some of my colleagues across the room, also began moving toward his son, but I caught his eye and shook my head slightly. This was my confrontation to manage. "Bradley," I said calmly, when I reached him, "this is my wedding reception. Whatever you need to say can wait until tomorrow." "Like hell it can," he spat. "You went behind my back to my father. You turned him against me." Several guests had stopped dancing to watch, though the band continued playing. Andrew stood just behind me, a solid presence of support, but allowing me to handle the situation. "I didn't go to your father," I said, keeping my voice level. "He came to me after discovering what you did." Bradley's face contorted with anger. "You've been plotting this for months, working to undermine me, curry favor with my father, steal my position." I felt a flash of anger but controlled it. "The only person who undermined you was yourself, Bradley. I simply did my job despite your constant interference and sabotage." "Sabotage," he scoffed. "I was trying to correct your mediocre work, and now you've convinced my father to demote me and give you a director position. This is nepotism at its worst." I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of his accusation. Nepotism. You were made COO straight out of business school with zero practical experience solely because you're Gerald's son. That's the definition of nepotism. Bradley's face reddened further. "I earned that position. My MBA is from Harvard." "An education isn't the same as experience or emotional intelligence," I replied. "Leadership requires more than a degree. It requires respect for others' collaborative skills and integrity. All qualities you've consistently failed to demonstrate." By now, Gerald had reached us, Eleanor close behind him. "Bradley," he said firmly, "that's enough. You're interrupting Crystal's wedding celebration." Bradley whirled to face his father. "How could you do this to me? Your own son. You're giving her everything that should be mine." Gerald's expression was pained but resolute. "Crystal earned her promotion through years of excellent work and leadership. Your position was a gift you weren't ready for, and I take full responsibility for that mistake." "A mistake?" Bradley looked stricken. "You think I'm a mistake?" "Not you," Gerald clarified. "My decision to promote you before you were ready. That was my failure, as both a CEO and a father." Several of my colleagues from Platinum had drawn closer, watching the confrontation unfold. I recognized Melissa from the creative team and Jason from account management, both of whom had suffered under Bradley's leadership style. "You're all against me," Bradley accused, looking around wildly. "You've all been working to undermine me from the beginning." Melissa stepped forward. "No one had to undermine you, Bradley. We all just watched you consistently take credit for other people's work while blaming them for your mistakes." Jason nodded. "The difference between how you treat people and how Crystal does is night and day. She builds people up. You tear them down." Bradley looked shocked to hear this public criticism. "That's not true. I'm a strong leader who demands excellence." "You confuse intimidation with leadership," I said quietly. "Real leadership inspires people to excel because they believe in the vision and feel valued for their contributions." Andrew placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. I think you should leave now, Bradley. This is our wedding day, and you've already caused enough disruption. Bradley turned his glare to Andrew. Oh, I'm sure you're thrilled with all of this. Your wife gets a big promotion, and you both get to move to Portland for a fresh start. How convenient. My career move to Portland was decided before any of this happened, Andrew replied calmly. But yes, I'm incredibly proud of Crystal and the recognition she's receiving for her talents. Gerald stepped between Bradley and us. That's enough, son. We'll discuss this tomorrow when you've calmed down. For now, you need to leave and let Crystal and Andrew enjoy their wedding. Fine, Bradley said bitterly. Enjoy your victory party, Crystal. But this isn't over. As Bradley turned to leave, escorted by his mother and one of the venue staff, the tension in the room began to dissipate. The band, which had switched to quieter background music during the confrontation, returned to playing upbeat dance songs. Several guests approached to check if I was okay. My bridesmaids formed a protective circle, expressing outrage at Bradley's behavior and offering support. I can't believe he showed up at your wedding like that, Sabrina fumed. The audacity. I took a deep breath, feeling strangely calm. Actually, I'm glad it happened. It was cathartic to finally confront him directly after months of his manipulation. Andrew wrapped his arm around my waist. You were amazing, so poised and articulate even with him shouting accusations. Gerald approached us, looking apologetic. Crystal, Andrew, I'm so sorry about that. I had no idea Bradley would show up here. It's not your fault, I assured him. Bradley makes his own choices. Gerald shook his head sadly. Still, to disrupt your wedding day twice. I'm deeply embarrassed and sorry. Let's not let it overshadow the celebration, Andrew suggested. After all, we have much to be thankful for today. As the party resumed its festive atmosphere, I noticed something interesting. The Platinum employees who had witnessed the confrontation were approaching other guests, apparently explaining what had happened. Far from casting a pall over the reception, the incident seemed to have created a sense of solidarity and triumph. Later, Melissa pulled me aside. I need to confess something, she said. Several of us from Platinum are here because Gerald invited us. He reached out 3 days ago, saying he wanted to surprise you with our support. I looked around and realized there were at least 10 Platinum employees I hadn't personally invited. Gerald arranged for all of you to come. Melissa nodded. He said he'd been investigating Bradley's management and wanted to make a gesture to show his appreciation for those who had maintained their integrity despite the difficult environment. And then Bradley's text message this morning accelerated everything I concluded. Exactly. Gerald called an emergency meeting with several department heads, and that's when he shared his plans for the Portland office and your role in it. Melissa grinned. We're all thrilled, by the way. And most of us are hoping you'll consider us for positions there. This revelation touched me deeply. Even before Bradley's rash action, Gerald had been taking steps to recognize the issues and make amends. As the evening continued, I found myself surrounded by colleagues expressing their congratulations and interest in the Portland opportunity. What could have been a day marred by professional betrayal had instead become a launchpad for an exciting new chapter, not just for me and Andrew, but potentially for many of my valued colleagues as well. When it came time for us to leave the reception, passing through a tunnel of sparklers held by our guests, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and possibility. Bradley had intended to crush my spirit on my wedding day, but instead his actions had inadvertently opened doors I might never have walked through otherwise. As Andrew and I drove away toward our hotel, ready to depart for our honeymoon the next morning, I couldn't help but reflect on how differently the day had turned out from what I had feared when I first read that text message. What are you thinking about? Andrew asked, noticing my contemplative expression. Just that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best opportunities, I replied, squeezing his hand. And that I'm incredibly lucky to be starting this new chapter with you. 6 months after our wedding day, Andrew and I had settled into our new home in Portland, a charming craftsman with a view of the mountains on clear days. The transition had been smoother than I anticipated, largely thanks to Gerald's comprehensive relocation assistance and the enthusiastic welcome from Andrew's new firm. The Portland office of Platinum Advertising was flourishing under my leadership. I had assembled a team of 15 talented professionals, including 7 who had transferred from the main office, eager to escape the toxic environment Bradley had created and help build something new. Melissa had become my creative director, bringing fresh energy and innovative approaches that our West Coast clients particularly appreciated. Jason headed our account management department, maintaining strong relationships with existing clients while helping secure new ones. The collaborative culture we established echoed the original Platinum ethos that Gerald had created, with an added emphasis on work-life balance and professional development. In our first quarter, we had exceeded revenue projections by 22% and secured 3 major new clients. Gerald was delighted with our progress, visiting monthly to provide guidance but never micromanaging. He trusted my vision and leadership, which empowered me to make bold decisions. The Portland office has surpassed all my expectations, Gerald told me during his most recent visit. You've created exactly the kind of environment I always envisioned for Platinum. I learned from the best, I replied sincerely, both what to do and what not to do. Gerald nodded, understanding my reference to Bradley. Speaking of which, I thought you might want an update on that situation. After the wedding confrontation, Bradley had taken a 3-month leave of absence from the company. During that time, he worked with an executive coach specializing in emotional intelligence and underwent a structured leadership development program. Bradley has been working as an account executive in our Chicago office for the past 2 months, Gerald explained, under the mentorship of Victoria Chen, one of our most experienced directors. It's a complete reset, starting from a non-management position. How is he handling it? I asked, genuinely curious rather than vindictive. There was significant resistance at first, Gerald admitted, but Victoria doesn't tolerate the behaviors that I enabled. She's tough but fair, and Bradley is beginning to understand the value of collaborative work and proper attribution. That's good to hear, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish Bradley ill. I just wanted him to become a better leader and person. He's asked to speak with you, actually, Gerald continued. To apologize personally. I told him that would be entirely your decision. I considered this. 6 months ago, the idea of speaking to Bradley would have filled me with anxiety and anger. Now, secure in my position and confident in my abilities, I felt ready for that conversation. I'm open to it, I told Gerald. Not immediately, but perhaps when he visits Portland next month for the regional conference. 2 weeks later, Bradley and I met for coffee at a quiet cafe near our office. He looked different, somehow less polished, but more authentic. The designer suit and arrogant posture were gone, replaced by business casual attire and a more humble demeanor. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, he began. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. 6 months ago, that would have been true, I acknowledged. But I'm curious to hear what you have to say now. Bradley took a deep breath. First, I want to apologize for my behavior both during your time under my supervision and especially on your wedding day. It was unprofessional, unkind, and ultimately self-defeating. I nodded, allowing him to continue. Working with Victoria has been eye-opening, he admitted. She calls me out on behaviors I didn't even recognize as problematic. And starting over as an account executive has shown me how much I didn't understand about the actual work our teams do. That's a valuable perspective, I said. The hardest lesson, Bradley continued, has been recognizing how my insecurity manifested as aggression. I felt threatened by your competence because I knew deep down that I hadn't earned my position. This level of self-awareness surprised me. That's quite an insight. I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship, Bradley clarified. I just wanted you to know that I recognize the harm I caused, and I'm working to be better. We talked for another hour discussing the challenges of leadership and the importance of emotional intelligence in business. It wasn't exactly reconciliation, but it was a professional conversation between 2 adults who had moved beyond a toxic dynamic. As Bradley prepared to leave, he asked, "Do you have any advice for someone trying to rebuild their reputation?" I considered the question carefully. Be consistent. Change isn't proven in big declarations, but in daily actions over time. And give credit generously, especially to those whose contributions might otherwise be overlooked. He nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for the advice and for hearing me out. After Bradley left, I walked back to our office, reflecting on how much had changed in 6 months. My career had advanced beyond what I might have achieved in years at the main office. Andrew was thriving at Westbrook already, leading a major sustainable housing development. We were discussing starting a family feeling settled and secure in our new community. That evening over dinner, I shared details of my conversation with Andrew. Do you think he's genuinely changed? Andrew asked. I think he's trying, I replied. Whether it lasts depends on whether he's doing it for himself or just to get back in his father's good graces? Andrew nodded. Either way, it's not your problem anymore. You've built something amazing here, completely separate from him. He was right. The Portland office was thriving under my leadership with a culture of mutual respect and collaboration. Team members felt valued and empowered to contribute their best ideas. Clients appreciated our innovative approaches and responsive service. We were building a reputation as the agency to watch in the Pacific Northwest. Most importantly, I had learned invaluable lessons through the experience. First, that my worth wasn't defined by someone else's perception. Bradley's attempts to diminish me had ultimately failed because I knew my own value and had the evidence to back it up. Second, that documentation matters. My habit of keeping records of my contributions and client feedback had provided Gerald with the evidence he needed to recognize Bradley's sabotage. Third, that integrity and professionalism eventually win out over manipulation and politics. By maintaining my standards even when faced with unfair treatment, I had preserved both my reputation and my self-respect. And finally, that sometimes what feels like the worst possible moment can actually be the catalyst for positive change. Bradley's cruel text on my wedding day had set in motion events that led to greater opportunities than I might have otherwise pursued. You know, I told Andrew as we sat on our back deck, watching the sunset, if Bradley hadn't fired me that day, we might not be here now. I might have continued tolerating that toxic environment, trying to make it work despite the obstacles. Andrew smiled. Sometimes the universe gives us a push when we're reluctant to jump. Or in this case, a shove, I laughed. Looking out at the life we were building together, I felt profound gratitude. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led us exactly where we needed to be. Have you ever experienced a moment that initially seemed devastating, but ultimately led to something better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my experience, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming workplace challenges and finding your true path. Share this with someone who might be struggling in a toxic work environment and needs encouragement to stand their ground or make a change. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes what looks like an ending is actually the beginning of something much better.